less than 12 months on recommendations for how we can support safe, reliable, efficient roadways, railways, and transit throughout our state. We have accomplished so much in the past year, listening to residents in every community of our state and working in partnership with the legislature. We've shown that we can take on hard challenges and deliver. That's what our budget proposal for fiscal year 25 is all about. We look forward to working closely with the legislature again to deliver on shared goals, to lower costs, and to grow opportunities for people all across this great state. And now you'll hear from Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll.
Thank you, Governor. It's great to be here with all of our teammates in government, especially so many of our A&F analysts who we spent a lot of quality time with over the last several weeks. You know, this budget process gives us the welcome opportunity to take a deeper dive into the work that each executive office and agency is doing. It's truly impressive to see the breadth of ways that our work helps grow people, right? There's numbers here, but behind all those dollars, we know there are people. People, communities, businesses, all of this budget is tied to trying to ensure we're doing the best we can to serve that population. And it's inspiring to see how hard our whole team is working to make every dollar go as far as possible, as far as it possibly can for those residents. I want to focus a bit on the local aid process of this budget proposal. We're really proud of the budget that fully funds the fourth year phase-in of the Student Opportunity Act. This is a $6.9 million budget item for Chapter 70 education, representing a 4% increase over fiscal year 2024, helping all 351 cities and towns. The budget also recommends an overall investment in local aid to our cities and towns of $8.7 billion, a 3% increase, which includes a 3% increase in unrestricted government aid. In addition, we're proposing to use $100 million from fair share funding in this budget to boost Chapter 90 transportation funding to a total of $300 million in fiscal year 2025 to help cities and towns repair crumbling roads and bridges. We know that 80% of roads in the Commonwealth are local roads, the ones you drive on every day. That's where these dollars are so precious and so important. We're also recommending a 35% increase in funding for local resilience projects that protect communities from flooding and other climate-related impacts, investments in culverts and dams, and ways that we can future-proof infrastructure. As a former mayor, and certainly as someone who has traveled around the state, listening to our local officials, understanding what their needs are in every region of the Commonwealth, I'm really proud of the way that this budget proposal responds to local needs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over for more details to the Secretary of A&F, Secretary Gorkowitz.
We're excited to be here today to present to all of you the Governor's fiscal year 25 budget recommendations. I want to start by thanking my A&F team that has put countless hours into this budget over the past month. Thank you all for your hard work and dedication to this team. I also want to thank the Governor and Lieutenant Governor for their guidance and leadership in helping to craft a budget that responsibly builds on the important investments we are able to make in our first year in this administration. As the Governor said, the budget we are filing today is balanced, responsible, and forward-looking, and continues to make progress on the types of investments in areas like early education, transportation, that will be transformative for many years to come. Many of these new investments, such as literacy launch and the doubling of the operating budget support for the MBTA, and the funding to leverage billions in borrowing for our transportation system and higher education campuses, are possible because of the thoughtful approach this administration has taken to making sure that the $1.3 billion budgeted from fair share surtax revenues work for everyone in the state. Fair share continues to enable us to make transformative investments in our schools, childcare, and transportation systems. This will pay dividends for generations. But as we have all acknowledged what is in front of us, tax collections in FY24 have not kept pace with projections, and for FY25 we expect revenue growth to be flat. This has required a thoughtful and deliberate approach to how we manage spending. The good news is that economists tell us that we should expect to see a soft landing in this fiscal year and a recovery in the later half of FY25 into FY26. After a series of years with unprecedented revenue growth and enhanced federal resources, the FY25 budget responds to this fiscal climate by limiting growth to 2.9% over last year's fiscal year GAA, excluding spending tied to surtax and medical assistance trust fund, which of course has dedicated revenue sources. This spending growth is below inflation, with the consumer price index currently up 3.5% compared to last year. This controlled growth emphasizes the administration's commitment to ensuring fiscal sustainability and helping Massachusetts stay competitive. In addition, House 2 relies on a combination of recurring new revenues options, limited one-time and multi-year resources to produce a balanced budget approach that will set Massachusetts up for long-term success. This includes a limited use of excess capital gains capped at $375 million that will be an option of last resort. And even with this proposal, we continue to grow the stabilization fund, which has now reached a record high of $8 billion. I want to underscore the last point. This budget does not rely on the use of stabilization fund and is projected to grow the balance of the stabilization fund based on the proposal before you today. We also propose to generate new revenue growth through proposals such as iLottery that will grow revenue over time. Taken together, this combination of new recurring revenues and limited one-time and multi-year resources creates a glide path for future fiscal years when tax revenues begin to rebound. We believe this is a balanced and responsible approach to spending in fiscal year 25 that accounts for our fiscal reality while continuing to support essential programs and services. I'd like to close where I began. This budget is balanced, responsible, and forward-looking. It continues to make the types of key investments in transportation and education that will be transformative for years to come. Finally, I want to thank Chairman Michaelowicz and Chairman Rodrick and their staff. Their partnerships over the past years have been critical to our success, and it is in that spirit we officially today hand over the budget for our friends in the legislature, and I look forward to working with them to develop a budget that meets the needs of all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. Any questions? Well, it's going to mean a savings of about $16 million a year. It also reflects the fact that our prison population has declined. It's at the lowest point that it has been in 35 years. And so this is important not only for cost savings. The LG and I have talked for a long time about identifying state properties that we could repurpose and use for housing, for other things. And that's important as well. And thirdly, it's a matter of justice, too, and a reflection of where we are when it comes to that. So that's what is happening there.
Is there any idea what would happen to the property once you get there?
No, we're going to engage with community. We're going to engage with stakeholders. We just know that the purpose that it's being used for right now doesn't really right-size to the moment or the needs that we face, and there's more opportunities for that, in addition to it being a cost savings.
You say there's some belt tightening going on. Where are you cutting? Can you explain to people where you're cutting?
Sure. Mr. Secretary?
Sure. You know, when you look throughout this budget, we have a balanced set of solutions. And so when we talk about constraining revenue growth to 2.9%, we're living within available resources. Those available resources include some of the things we're pulling into the budget, like I mentioned, excess capital gains. But it also includes areas where when you go through the budget, you'll see probably, you know, on average about $450 million of reduced spending year over year. So comparing line items across the board, the cut to the Department of Corrections is a perfect example of a reduction that is embedded in this budget plan. It also has constrained spending growth, meaning that there are agencies across the board where growth in those agencies, where they're still growing, but the amount of growth has been limited through various reductions. So there's about $450 million of year-over-year budget reductions and about $500 million of constrained managed spending growth throughout this budget. And happy to point those out and talk about that in more detail after this.
Coupled with the migrant crisis, how much do you anticipate to spend in the upcoming fiscal year with that? And do you expect any pushback from the legislature?
Great. Do you want to speak to the numbers?
Sure. So alongside the budget today, we are filing a supplemental budget to appropriate funds for EA Shelter. The monies we're appropriating are consistent with the plan that we filed with the legislature a number of times now. That plan calls for us to repurpose some of our transitional escrow funds to provide additional funding in fiscal year 24 for the purposes of our EA shelter system, while also making those funds available for fiscal year 25. What you'll see in the four corners of our operating budget is that we level fund the EA system at $325 million. That's consistent with fiscal year 24, consistent with providing shelter to about 4,100 families. What we're trying to do through our supplemental bill is to provide relief for the extraordinary pressures that our EA system is experiencing, and that funding should carry us through both FY24 as well as FY25.
What's the bottom line for the shelter prices, and do you expect to need more of an additional supplemental budget after that?
Well, the situation is an evolving situation, as you know, and we continue to evolve with it. The funding that we put in place is our best projections for what will be needed. We believe the funding is appropriate for covering our costs for fiscal year 24, and the money we put in place is a total of $914 million for fiscal year 25, which is a combination of the $324 we have in our fiscal year 25 budget, as well as the additional amount, about $590, that we're appropriating through the transitional escrow funds.
And I would just add to that, thank you, Mr. Secretary, we continue to seek funding from the federal government. As I have said from the outset, this is a problem not of the state's making. It is a problem that we are having to deal with. And so we continue to press for funding from the federal government. We need action by Congress on the supplemental budget filed by President Biden. We also sent a letter the other day. As you may know, I joined with other governors in once again demanding relief, particularly for interior states who are having to bear the burden of so much of this in terms of migrants and new arrivals. I'll also finally add this point. We continue, though, to work to get people situated and out of shelter. 3,000 people, migrants, processed already in this state. No state has come close to doing that, to get work authorization so that they can get to work. We know there are a lot of employers, and we're working with a number to get folks working. So getting people exited out of shelter, getting them processed is very important while we continue to seek funding from the federal government.
But as far as state dollars are concerned, why rely on one-time funds instead of just increasing the EA line item?
Because we got to be smart. We got to be smart. It's an evolving situation. Revenues are evolving. We're making certain reforms to the EA system as well, because that's a system that's been in place for a while. And, you know, our job, as long as we're here, is to make sure that we're doing things in a smart way. And so we're undertaking that analysis and effort right now. And, you know, we'll be prepared to turn where we need to go, and we'll continue to stay in touch with the legislature on this.
Governor, what reforms are you proposing for the EA system? Are they?
Oh, we'll talk about that when we're more fully formed with some of that. But, you know, I think we know that this is a system that, you know, has been in place for a long time, and currently right now is really overburdened. We've got a real focus. We want families who are in shelter right now. There are a lot of Massachusetts families who've been in shelter, people who grew up and were raised here. We want to look at, you know, what we can do to help them get out of shelter and get to where they want to be. Everybody wants, you know, to be able to provide for their family. And that's why we've also made, once again, heavy investments in this budget when it comes to workforce, when it comes to vocational training, innovation, career pathways, you know, all sorts of things that we know will help our residents.
Your administration,
Governor, with the reforms include limiting the length of stays for families in the emergency shelter?
No, I don't want to overstate reforms right now or where we are in terms of analysis, but you know, it is something. It's something that we've got to address, right? This is a challenge, and we want to make sure that we're supporting our families and doing the best we can in terms of having a system that works for all. But you know, I am particularly pleased today to be able to talk about the important investments that we're making in education, in transportation, in infrastructure, in local roads and bridges, and the things that actually matter, right, to the quality of life for residents around the state. And I want to commend Secretary Gorkowitz and all of our team for, you know, going through and engaging in the hard work of figuring out how do we best deliver for residents? How do we best deliver for businesses? How do we best set us up for success when it comes to economic development and growth? These are, of course, recommendations we file with the legislature, but in the same way we were able to pass $1 billion tax cut, get Mass Reconnect in place, you know, free community college if you're 25 and older. It's already working. We've seen, you know, double-digit increase in enrollment already, people looking to upskill and get on to new careers, free school lunch and breakfast for children in this state. You know, we keep these things and we build on these things, and obviously we look forward to extensive work with the legislature in the time ahead. Thank you so much, everybody.
Really quick, Governor, this is a $58 billion budget. It's a
56.1. Yeah.
It's a big number, and people are hearing about having to make spending cuts, flat tax revenue, that kind of thing. Should there be more of an effort to rein in spending?
I think that, what I said earlier, Charmin, is look, we came in this budget within consensus revenue. We can't spend more than we have. That's kind of my basic operating principle, right? We can only spend what we have. So we've taken a look at what we have, and this budget accounts for that. It's also important, to your point, that we came in with a budget that's only 2.9% growth, okay? Which is under the rate of inflation and CPI. So we're really mindful of that because, again, we don't want to face hard decisions down the line. We want to make the smart choices up front, the smart investments up front. None of these choices are easy, but we think the investments are smart, they're fiscally responsible, they're also really forward-looking and transformative in terms of what we can do in the areas, some of which I outlined, transportation, education, and infrastructure. Thank you. Thank you. More questions on Concord, we can fill you in though, okay?